Hey everyone! Tonight we're starting with something that might make you look over your shoulder. Imagine the smell of roasted turkey drifting through a tiny kitchen. A flickering candle burns low, wax pooling onto a faded holiday tablecloth. The radiator hums in the corner, just barely keeping the November chill at bay. That's where I was wearing my only decent sweater, ladling gravy over mashed potatoes, when my son, Ryan, said, "Did you like the lake house I gave you?" "Mom, you might not survive this one." So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. And hey, comment where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, turn off the lights, maybe let a fan run for some gentle white noise, and let's begin tonight's journey together. Thanksgiving has always been complicated since my husband passed. Grief has this way of stretching time, turning holidays into ghost stories. But that year, I had hope. I'd spent hours cooking Ryan's favorites: green bean casserole, honey-glazed carrots, sweet potato pie. My knees ached, my back screamed, and I knew I'd be skipping lunch the next week to cover the grocery bill. Still, I told myself it was worth it. Ryan hadn't visited in months. He was always so busy, running that tech company of his out in Charlotte. CEO at 35, owner of a sleek consulting firm that employed over 200 people. I was proud of him, really, I was. But our conversations had become quick check-ins, "love you, Mom," layered in with client meetings and West Coast calls. So when I heard his knock on the door, my heart jumped. He looked successful. His watch probably cost more than my entire kitchen. Even his so-called casual sweater looked like it had never seen a washing machine. Behind him walked his wife, Elena, long cream coat, blonde hair swept perfectly over one shoulder, high-heeled boots clicking against my worn linoleum. She looked like she belonged in a winter catalog, not my two-bedroom rental in a sleepy part of North Carolina. "Mom, it smells incredible in here," Ryan said, hugging me lightly, then stepping back to help Elena with her coat. She smiled at me, polished, polite, but her eyes always held this cool calculation, like she was sizing up a business investment. We sat, we ate. Ryan talked about expanding his business to the West Coast. Elena chimed in now and then about a trip to Italy or renovations on their home. I nodded and smiled, even though every word made me feel further from their world. And then, it happened. As I served pumpkin pie, Ryan leaned back, completely relaxed, and smiled. "Mom, I've been meaning to ask, how are you enjoying the lake house I gave you?" I blinked, pie server still in my hand. I thought I misheard him. "What house, honey?" He frowned. "The one on Lake Windermere. I transferred it to your name for your birthday 2 years ago. You don't remember." The room went quiet, except for the clink of Elena's fork gently setting on her plate. She suddenly stood up. "Oh, I just remembered I have to make a call about tomorrow's spa appointment." Her voice was light, too light, as she hurried into the kitchen with her phone already in hand. Ryan was still frowning. "Mom, the lake house? My assistant handled all the paperwork. There should have been monthly payments too for maintenance and expenses. I've been sending you $500 every month since the deed transfer." My vision tunneled. I had to grip the table to steady myself. "Ryan, I never received a house or any monthly payments." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "That's impossible. I have the receipts, the transfers. Rebecca sent everything." Elena's voice filtered in from the kitchen, low, urgent. "Show me," I whispered. "Show me the paperwork." Ryan pulled out his phone, scrolling quickly, his expression darkening by the second. "Something's not right. You should have gotten everything. The deed, the payments. If you didn't, then who did?" And then we both turned toward the kitchen. Elena's voice had gone silent. No fake cheer, no hushed tones. Just nothing. When I walked in, she was facing the sink, phone still in her hand. When she heard our footsteps, she spun around fast, eyes wide. "Everything okay?" Ryan asked. But his tone had changed. It was the voice he used when something in the room smelled like trouble. I caught it then, that flicker of guilt behind her eyes, the slight tremble in her hand, the way her fingers toyed with her wedding ring like it was a panic button. "Elena," Ryan said slowly, "you helped coordinate with Rebecca around that time. Do you know anything about the lake house paperwork?" Her lips parted, closed, opened again, but no words came out. That silence, it was the sound of my world beginning to crack. I wasn't sure what was worse, realizing someone had stolen from me, or realizing it had happened under my own roof, wrapped in polite smiles and perfectly curled hair. Old age insight of the night. If something feels off, it probably is. But most of us are taught to ignore that instinct until it's too late. Offbeat fact. Lake Windermere isn't real, but there are 40-plus fictional towns in America created purely for movies. I guess mine just got one, too. Academically debatable phrase. Grief affects everyone differently. Sure, but I'm starting to think betrayal might hit harder. I stood there, feet rooted to the floor, staring at Elena as she fumbled for an explanation. She opened her mouth and gave me a look that might have passed for innocent if you didn't know what to look for, but after 15 years scrubbing corporate offices, I knew what guilt smelled like, and this room was thick with it. I mean, she stammered, there could have been a mix-up. Maybe the bank sent things to the wrong address. Ryan's expression didn't change. His phone was still in his hand, thumb frozen above the screen. He looked like he was trying to process a software crash in human form. "Elena," he said quietly, "do you remember what account the payments were being deposited into?" Her eyes flitted to the floor, then back up. I think I used the updated info you gave me." "I never gave you my mother's banking information," Ryan snapped. His voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut glass. "Rebecca said the account ending in 4782 belonged to Mom. That's not her account. Mom's ends in 9156. So who gave Rebecca the fake one?" Elena's hands trembled now. She clutched her phone like it might teleport her out of the room. "Let's call Rebecca," I said, my voice steady. "Put her on speaker." Ryan didn't hesitate. Within moments, we were listening to Rebecca's voice on speakerphone, calm and professional, even as Ryan's questions grew more pointed. "Yes, sir, I have all the files here," she said. "The deed was transferred to Claire Bennett, your mother, 2 years ago this month, and monthly payments of $1,500 were sent to the bank account ending in 4782. "Elena," Ryan said, turning to his wife, "where did you get that account number?" She didn't answer, but she didn't have to. Rebecca kept talking, unaware of the growing storm in our kitchen. "I was told by Mrs. Harrison, your wife, that your mother's banking information had changed. She provided the routing and account number and requested all future payments be directed there." Ryan's face went pale, and the mailing address for the deed. Rebecca hesitated. That was changed as well. "Sent to 212 Fairhill Avenue, apartment B." I nearly dropped my glass. "That's not me. I've lived on Oak Ridge for 10 years. Rebecca paused again. "I'm sorry. Mrs. Bennett, I should have verified everything. The request came from your daughter-in-law. I had no reason to suspect fraud." The call ended, but the room stayed thick with silence. Ryan looked at Elena, jaw clenched. "Elena, did you steal from my mother?" "I was going to tell you," she whispered. When he asked, his voice flat, "After you drained every cent." She took a step toward him, mascara already smudging. "My parents were about to lose their house. Ryan, my dad's heart medication costs a fortune. I panicked. I thought I could fix it before anyone found out." "You took 2 years' worth of support meant for my mother," he said. "You stole a house." Elena's breath caught. "I didn't steal it. I just borrowed it. My family stayed there. That's all. I thought she wasn't even using it." Something cold snapped in me. "Wasn't using it," I said. I didn't know it existed. Elena, I've been cutting my blood pressure pills in half to make them last longer. I've been working double shifts and eating canned soup for dinner while you were sipping wine by the lake. Her face crumbled. I'm sorry. I didn't think it would go this far. I meant to fix it. Ryan laughed short, bitter. That's the problem with lies. They tend to stack up fast, don't they? I looked at my son. He looked hollow, like someone had pulled the spine out of him. I realized just how much he had trusted her, just how thoroughly that trust had been twisted. Elena, he said quietly, go upstairs. Pack a bag. You're not staying here tonight. Ryan, please. I said go. She stood frozen for a moment, then stumbled past us toward the stairs. After she was gone, Ryan sat down at the table. His head dropped into his hands. For a long while, neither of us said anything. I thought you were okay, he finally said. I thought you were safe, that you had everything you needed. She told me you were fine, that you were happy. I tried to be, I said softly, but I've been surviving, not living. He shook his head. I should have checked. I should have called more. Should have done something. You did what you thought was right. I told him. You tried to take care of me. He looked up, tears in his eyes, and instead, I handed you over to a thief. That broke something in me. I reached across the table and took his hand. She fooled both of us, honey. We both loved her, and she used that. Now here's a piece of older wisdom I never expected to use. If you ever feel like something's off, don't let politeness stop you from asking hard questions. And did you know North Carolina is home to over 50 artificial lakes, including one that's technically classified as a reservoir, but has more million-dollar homes than Beverly Hills? Strange, huh? As for something debatable, some psychologists believe humans are wired to trust, especially those closest to us. But in my experience, blind trust is just love without a lock. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 2 years. I called in sick. It felt odd saying the words out loud, even more so hearing Mrs. Henderson on the other end of the phone sounding genuinely surprised. Claire. Oh, I hope everything's all right. I wanted to laugh. It's not, I said honestly, but I'm working on it. After I hung up, I sat quietly in the kitchen, the same one where I'd spent the last 2 years making do with powdered creamer and generic tea bags. Ryan arrived a little after 10, arms full of paperwork and a laptop case slung over his shoulder like a battle pack. He looked like he hadn't slept. His hair was messy, his shirt untucked. You ready? He asked. I wasn't, but I nodded. We cleared off the kitchen table and laid everything out: bank statements, legal notices, emails, receipts. Ryan's laptop whirred quietly as he pulled up transaction logs. Let's start with the deed, he said. He opened a scanned PDF. There's your signature, he pointed out. I leaned in. That's not mine. Ryan frowned. It says Claire Bennett. Sure does. But look at the C. I always curl it a little. This one's straight. And the E is wrong. I loop mine high. This one dips low. He sat back, then pulled open a drawer and found a birthday card I'd written him the year before. Well, hell, he muttered. You're right. He held up his phone and took a picture of the forged signature next to the real one. I'll send this to Mr. Callahan. Then he clicked into another file a list of recurring transactions. There it was. Won the $500 transfers on the first of each month for 2 years. Everyone marked as successful. The money went to that fake account, he said. All of it. And who opened it, I asked, because I sure didn't. He nodded grimly. We'll find out. Right. By noon, we were at First National Bank in downtown Summersville. The lobby was quiet, the kind of quiet you get in buildings where people wear suits even when they're not cold. A woman named Rachel led us into a little glass-walled room. I handed over my ID and social security card. Rachel tapped a few keys on her computer, then looked up, confused. Mrs. Bennett, she said slowly. "You've never banked with us before, correct?" "No, ma'am." "Well, someone opened an account in your name 2 years ago. It's active, with a balance of $143.97. Payments have been going in regularly." Ryan leaned forward. "Can you show us the signature card?" She pulled it up and turned the monitor slightly so we could see. There it was again, that fake Claire Bennett in the same slightly slanted, wrong handwriting style as the deed. "I didn't sign that," I said. Rachel frowned. "Then I'm afraid this is identity theft." She tapped a few more times. "The address on file is 212 Fair Hill Avenue, apartment B. Phone number listed isn't yours either." "Nope," I said. "Never lived on Fair Hill, and that's not my number." Rachel stood. "Ma'am, you need to file a police report, right away." Back in the car, Ryan sat stiff in the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel like it owed him money. "She really did it," he muttered. "She really set up the whole thing. Fake account, fake address, forged your signature." "How did she get my personal info?" I asked. "You didn't give her my social security number, right?" "No," he said quickly. Then he went still. "But I kept our family records in the home office. Copies of everything. She had full access." The betrayal came in waves, not just what she took, but how deeply she'd planned it. Elena hadn't stumbled into theft. She'd architected it like a project, a system built out of my stolen life. That evening, back at home, I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing Elena scrolling through our family files, copying my information without hesitation, then using it to make herself comfortable while I clipped coupons and counted quarters. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's slow, quiet, like a leak under your floorboards that rots everything before you smell it. And I'd been rotting for 2 years. The next day, we drove to 212 Fair Hill Avenue. The building was a rundown 3-story walk-up on the other side of town. A handwritten "for rent" sign was taped to the front door of apartment B. No one lived there anymore. She probably rented it just long enough to have an address for the fake account, Ryan muttered. We stood there for a while in the cold. The wind smelled like wet leaves and sour coffee grounds. It was the kind of place you pass a dozen times and never look at. Just like me. I thought, invisible until someone needs something. By the time we got back, Mr. Callahan had already responded to the email with the forged signature. "This is textbook fraud," he said on speakerphone. "Forgery, identity theft, financial deception. We can go after her civilly and criminally." I nodded slowly, barely absorbing the words. My brain felt like it had been in a dryer on full spin. "I want to press charges," I said. Ryan glanced at me. "I want her to face what she did, and not just because she stole from me, but because she knew exactly how much I needed what she took." He didn't argue. He just said, "Okay." Quirky fact of the night. In North Carolina, it's technically illegal to borrow someone's dog without asking. I think we should add also illegal to borrow someone's identity, house, and financial future, but maybe that's just me. Insight from an old woman who's been through it. People don't always fall in love with people. They fall in love with the version of them they want to believe in. And that's the academically debatable part. Can someone accidentally steal from you for 2 years? I'm going to say. Probably not. We spent the next few days knee-deep in paperwork, me with a magnifying glass. Ryan with that intense frown he used to wear when his science fair volcano wasn't erupting quite right. It was surreal, sifting through digital documents and physical printouts, trying to piece together just how much of my life had been stolen. Every day revealed some new detail, each one more disturbing than the last. "You're not going to believe this," Ryan said one evening, waving his tablet at me like it was radioactive. "Remember the extra $500 I sent last year for your glasses?" I nodded slowly. That money never showed up, so I'd bought a $10 pair from the drugstore and hoped my prescription hadn't changed much. "She took that too," he said, And the $800 I sent for dental work. The Christmas bonus. Even the check I mailed you on your birthday, she had the forwarding address changed. It was like watching a jigsaw puzzle come together. Only the picture it made wasn't of a mountain or a beach, but a woman with no soul. The next big step came when we scheduled an appointment at the county sheriff's office. I wore my best jacket, the one with a button missing from the cuff, and Ryan carried a manila folder thicker than most cookbooks. Deputy Simmons was kind and patient. He had this calming way about him, like he was more used to solving neighborhood cat disappearances than financial crimes. But the more we showed him, the more serious his face became. Opening a fraudulent account, he muttered, flipping through copies of forged documents, forging signatures, redirecting mail, financial theft. He closed the folder gently. "Ma'am," he said, "this isn't just bad behavior. This is a crime spree, and a pretty sophisticated one." He looked at Ryan. "Do you have any reason to believe your wife acted alone?" Ryan hesitated. "I don't think her family knew, but they've been living in the house she stole, renovating it, benefiting from the money." Deputy Simmons nodded slowly. "We'll investigate, but we'll also need you to file a formal report. This will take time and it may involve federal agencies." Federal. That word hit me harder than I expected. I'd never thought of myself as someone who'd need a lawyer, much less the protection of the U.S. government. But there I was. We signed the complaint. I signed with my real name looped C, high E, just like always. It felt good to put it down, like a piece of myself was back. Back at home, Ryan made tea while I sat at the table staring at nothing in particular. "How did I not notice?" I whispered. He set a mug in front of me and sat across the table. "She was good," he said. "She made sure everything looked legitimate, and she knew how to manipulate people, how to hide things behind birthday cards and polite smiles." I wrapped my hands around the mug, letting the warmth seep into my knuckles. "I used to like her," I admitted. "She'd bring me tea towels from her travels, ask how I was feeling." "She asked because she knew exactly what you were missing," Ryan said bitterly. "She kept tabs on your struggles so she could cover her tracks. Make sure you never ask too many questions." I took a sip of the tea, lemon chamomile, my favorite. Funny how even small comforts felt suspicious now. That night, I had a dream I was swimming across a lake, but every time I got close to the shore, it moved farther away. I woke up with my heart pounding, unsure if it was just a dream or a memory of how I'd felt for 2 straight years. The thing about being poor, really poor, is that it wears down your curiosity. You stop asking where help is coming from because help never comes. You learn to be grateful for the struggle itself, because at least it means you're still in the fight. But all that time, I thought I was hanging on by a thread, when I should have been holding the keys to a house by a lake. Sighed. Later that week, Ryan took me out for breakfast. It felt indulgent, like I didn't quite deserve pancakes when there were unpaid bills sitting at home, but he insisted. "I know this diner's not fancy," he said, sliding into the booth across from me, "but they've got the best bacon this side of I-85. The waitress brought coffee. I stirred mine while Ryan scrolled through his phone, his brow furrowed. Rebecca sent over more files. She kept all the original requests Elena made, email chains, confirmation calls. He turned the screen to me. There it was, an email from Elena, written in a tone so polished it could have come from a lawyer. "Please update Mrs. Bennett's financial records," it said. "She's asked that all future documentation and deposits be directed to her new account." And below it, a signature warmly, Elena Harrison. "She didn't even try to fake your email address," Ryan muttered. "Just told Rebecca you changed banks and wanted everything rerouted." "It's frightening how easy it was," I said. "Just a few lies and a nice smile." Ryan nodded. "She stole your identity like someone swiping a parking pass." Sigh. That day, Mr. Callahan called with more news. "She also filed taxes in your name," he said. "Claimed income you never received. Wrote off expenses you never had. The IRS has flagged it for review." I blinked. The IRS thinks I committed tax fraud. Not for long, he said. We'll prove it. But for now, we need to be careful. This isn't just theft. It's layered, deliberate fraud, and it crosses state lines. My mouth went dry. What happens if I hadn't found out, if Ryan hadn't asked about the house? Mr. Callahan was quiet for a moment. You could have faced fines, even prison time, all for crimes you never committed. Ryan's face turned a shade paler than usual. But we're going to fix it, the lawyer added firmly. Starting now. Wisdom of the day. The scariest lies are the ones dressed up in good intentions, and the most dangerous thieves are the ones who call you mom. Tonight's odd fact. According to federal statistics, most cases of elder financial abuse are committed by family members, often daughters-in-law. Think about that next time someone insists family always comes first. And your debatable phrase, everything happens for a reason. Sure, but sometimes the reason is that someone else made a series of very selfish choices. We didn't go to the lake house right away. Part of me wasn't ready to see it. I knew it was legally mine, had been for 2 years, but it still felt like someone else's dream, or worse, like a gift wrapped in guilt. But one afternoon, about a week after filing the police report, Ryan turned to me over lunch and said, "We need to go." "To the house?" I asked, setting my fork down. He nodded. "We can't move forward if we don't face what's already ours." So we packed into his car, and with a nervous knot in my stomach, we headed toward Lake Windermere. It was a quiet drive, the kind where the radio stays off and no one wants to break the silence. As we got closer, I rolled down the window a little. The air changed cooler, sharper, carrying that familiar scent of pine and water. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd smelled something clean. When we pulled into the driveway, I wasn't prepared for what I saw. The house was beautiful. Not big and fancy beautiful, more like thoughtful, peaceful. A one-story ranch-style home nestled in tall trees, with a wraparound porch and lake views that shimmered like glass. There were flowers blooming in the beds, and wind chimes dancing quietly on the porch. I was speechless. "This was supposed to be yours," Ryan said gently, cutting the engine. "And someone else lived here instead," I whispered. We sat in the car for a moment longer, staring at the place where I should have been sipping coffee, watching ducks, and maybe reading mystery novels with a blanket over my lap. Then the front door opened. Elena's father stepped out. He was grayer than I remembered, slower too, like a man who'd been carrying a weight for too long. When he saw us, his expression fell not in surprise, but in resignation. He walked down the steps slowly and stopped at the edge of the gravel. "We've been expecting you," he said quietly. Inside the house, it was everything I imagined and everything I hadn't. The furniture was tasteful, neutral tones, soft rugs, family photos on the mantel, except none of them were my family. Elena's parents, her brother, even a couple of photos of children I didn't recognize. I tried to picture them here, laughing in the kitchen, sleeping in the bed meant for me, celebrating holidays under twinkling lights in the living room. "Claire," Elena said. She stepped out from the hallway, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked different, thinner, paler. Her hair wasn't curled. Her sweatshirt looked borrowed. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears already welling up. I didn't say anything. She moved closer. "I know you'll never believe me, but it didn't start out like this. I needed to help my family. That first payment, I meant to return it, but then it kept going. It got easier." "Easier," Ryan said behind me, his voice bitter. Elena turned to him, desperate. "Ryan, I didn't do it to hurt anyone. I just didn't know how to stop. Every time I thought about confessing, it felt too late. And the more I tried to fix it, the worse it got." "You didn't try to fix it," I said quietly. "You tried to hide it." She flinched. "My mother went without medication while you were renovating a guest room," Ryan added. Elena wiped her cheeks, but the mascara streaks only got worse. "I thought you were okay," she said to me. "You never said anything. I thought maybe Ryan was exaggerating how much you needed." "That's the thing about struggling," I said. "Most of us don't broadcast it. We're too busy trying to survive." Elena's mother came into the room next. She looked like she'd aged 5 years since Thanksgiving. "I didn't know," she said, clutching her hands together. "Claire, please believe me. We didn't know what she'd done." "You thought your daughter's husband bought you a lake house out of the blue?" I asked. She looked pained. She said Ryan insisted. Said it was a surprise for you, but you didn't want it. So she offered it to us while you figured things out. I stared at her, unsure whether I believed her or not. Then I looked at Elena again. "This was my retirement," I said. "You took my peace. You took what my husband and I spent our lives building toward. You didn't just steal money, you stole time I'll never get back." Elena's voice cracked. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing," I replied. "There's nothing left to say." So, we left the house in silence. Mr. Callahan was waiting for us at my place later that afternoon with a legal folder under his arm and a tired look on his face. "I served them the notice this morning," he said. "They'll have 30 days to vacate. Everything in the house, unless they can prove it was purchased independently, will be considered part of the restitution." Ryan sank into a chair. "What happens if they refuse?" "They won't," Mr. Callahan replied. "Elena knows what's coming, and as of this morning, the DA has formally filed charges. She'll be arrested within the week." I took a deep breath, the kind that feels like it scrapes through your ribs on the way out. "Is it normal to feel nothing?" I asked. He looked at me. "What do you mean?" "I thought I'd feel angry, vindicated, something, but I just feel empty." He nodded slowly. "That's common. It's the shock lifting. You're no longer in survival mode." Ryan reached for my hand across the table. "It'll come, Mom. Peace will come." I wanted to believe that. But in that moment, I felt like I'd just escaped a storm only to realize the damage it left behind. A little lake wisdom for tonight. Still waters really do run deep, but it's the quiet lakes that hide the most wreckage at the bottom. Strange fact. There are more than 2 million reported cases of financial elder abuse every year in the U.S., and most go undetected. You'd be surprised how much fraud happens behind birthday cards and polite thank yous. And your philosophical nudge for this part. Forgiveness isn't forgetting it's surviving and still choosing to breathe. The night before Elena's arrest, I couldn't sleep. I wandered around my small living room, brushing my fingers across the worn arm of the couch, the chipped corner of the coffee table, the faded photo frames with crooked smiles. All of it felt suddenly temporary, like props from a stage play that had run too long. Ryan was asleep in the guest room. He insisted on staying over, said he didn't want me alone. Truth was, I didn't either. At around 3 a.m., I stepped outside into the cold air and sat on the front stoop with a blanket around my shoulders. The street was quiet, just the buzz of a distant street lamp and the hum of my neighbor's old refrigerator unit through the wall. And I thought about Elena. I thought about how easily she'd smiled at me across this very porch the summer before last, glass of lemonade in her hand, talking about how grateful she was to be part of our family. I thought about the way she'd complimented my cooking, brought me scented candles for Mother's Day, always asking about my blood pressure like she actually cared. It was theater, polished, rehearsed. And I had clapped for her performance, unaware that I was the one being robbed blind behind the curtain. So, the next morning, Mr. Callahan called to confirm the arrest was complete. She was cooperative, he said. His voice clipped, didn't resist, already retained a public defender. And her parents, I asked. They're moving out of the lake house within the next 2 weeks. We'll do a walkthrough once they're gone. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Thank you. Claire, there's more, he added. Our investigator found additional accounts. Elena opened 2 other bank accounts in your name, one in South Carolina, one here in Somersville. There were smaller deposits, but still, it's serious." "How serious?" Ryan asked from beside me. "Mr. Callahan sighed. "Enough to bump the total stolen amount closer to $78,000. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. $78,000. I had made $18,000 last year cleaning medical offices on night shifts. That meant she'd stolen more than 4 years of my salary. Gone. Just gone. I felt sick, like someone had kicked my stomach from the inside. Later that day, Ryan and I went to the police station to finish the paperwork. The woman at the front desk offered me a seat and a cup of coffee. "We've seen a lot of these," she said quietly, "but yours, it's one of the worst." I gave her a tight smile, too tired for conversation. Once we were in the interview room, Deputy Simmons joined us with 2 other officers. He laid out everything: the timeline, the charges, the hearing date. "She's being charged with identity theft, wire fraud, tax fraud, and forgery," he said, "all Class G felonies in this state. She could serve serious time." I looked at Ryan. He looked at me. Neither of us cheered. This wasn't a victory. It was a disaster we were simply surviving. "Will I have to testify?" I asked. "Probably," Deputy Simmons said gently, "but you'll have support, and with the evidence we have, the case is strong. You've done everything right." I didn't feel like I had. I felt like I'd missed every red flag along the way. But I nodded. Because doing everything right doesn't stop bad things from happening. It just gives you something to hold on to while they do. That evening, I sat across from Ryan in our usual booth at the Pinecone Diner. The same waitress Sandy brought us our coffee and apple pie. "You two doing okay?" she asked gently. Ryan offered a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "We're getting there." After she walked away, I looked at him. "Are you angry with her?" He didn't answer right away. "I'm angry at myself," he finally said, "for letting it happen, for not protecting you." "You didn't know," I said. "You trusted her." "Exactly," he said bitterly. "I thought she was kind. Thought she cared about you. I thought I could trust her with the people I loved most." "That's not your fault, honey. That's hers." He nodded, but his shoulders stayed tight. "She took that from me, too," he muttered. "The ability to trust my own judgment." I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "That'll come back. Slowly, just like everything else." The following week, we drove out to the lake house. Elena's family was already gone. The place looked the same on the outside, still lovely, still peaceful. But as I stepped inside, something shifted in my chest. This was the first time I'd entered that house without someone else's lies attached to it. It was quiet. Sunlight filtered through the big lake-facing windows. I walked through the rooms, trailing my fingers across furniture that wasn't mine. Yet. Ryan followed behind, silent. We reached the back porch, and I stepped out into the crisp spring air. The lake was still, calm, not a ripple. Ducks paddled near the shore. A breeze rustled the wind chimes hanging under the eaves. It was the kind of silence that invites healing, but I didn't know if I could trust it yet. "It's yours now," Ryan said gently from the doorway. I didn't answer. I was too overwhelmed to even think about claiming something that had been taken from me, then returned like a refund for damaged goods. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at a note Mr. Callahan had written. "Restitution phase begins. Total loss, $78,000. Assets frozen. Court date pending." So clinical, so sterile. But to me, every dollar on that list was a skipped lunch, a sleepless night, a missed doctor's appointment, a coat I couldn't afford, a bottle of pills I stretched for an extra week. Elena had stolen more than money. She'd stolen peace, dignity, the simple comfort of being taken care of when I needed it most. But now I was beginning to take it back.
Heat.
Tonight's old age wisdom. Just because someone sits at your table doesn't mean they deserve a seat. Sometimes, it's okay to stand up and show them the door. Weird fact of the evening, forging someone's signature even for something small isn't just a white lie. In many states, it carries up to 10 years of prison time. Yet people do it every day for checks, leases, even love letters. And for your dinner table debate, is it really forgiveness if you still want justice? I'd say yes. Forgiveness is what you do for yourself. Justice, that's for the record books. The summons came by mail, thick, official, and stamped in red like it wanted to scare me on sight. Inside was the court date, the charges, the usual list of rights and expectations written in cold legalese, but what struck me most was the defendant's name. Elena Harrison, a name that once belonged to my family. I sat down at the kitchen table, the very same one I'd scrubbed every Sunday for years. I traced the grain of the wood with my fingers, letting my eyes wander over the words until they blurred. My stomach turned. I don't know why I thought seeing it on paper would make this feel real. Maybe I was still hoping, deep down, that I'd wake up and it would all have been some strange dream, that Ryan would call and say, "Mom, it's all fixed, just a paperwork mistake." But there it was, clear as day. My daughter-in-law, the woman I'd trusted, was going to court for stealing my identity. And the house? And my peace of mind. We visited the lake house again that weekend, Ryan and I. This time, we brought boxes and a camera. It was time to take inventory of what had been left behind. Her parents had vacated the place as promised. I half expected to find spiteful damage, broken windows, holes in the drywall, at least a permanent marker on the walls. But no, the house was spotless. In fact, it was lovingly cared for. A clean kitchen, cushions fluffed, gardens still watered. It didn't make sense at first, until I realized they truly believed the house was a gift, that David had given it willingly, that I had no use for it. They lived here like it was theirs because they'd been told it was. In the hallway, a photo still hung on the wall, Elena's parents standing on the dock, holding hands like teenagers. A sunset stretched out behind them. Ryan stood beside me, jaw tight. They had no idea. "They should have asked," I murmured. He nodded. Maybe they didn't want to know the truth. We stepped out onto the back porch, the one that faced the lake. It had wide planks, new paint, and a hanging swing someone had bolted into the rafters. I sat in it. It creaked slightly, gently, like it belonged there. "You should move in," Ryan said quietly. "Not yet." "Why not?" "Because it still smells like someone else's life," I said, "and I'm not done sorting through the pieces of mine yet." He didn't argue. Instead, we spent the afternoon cataloging furniture and appliances, the dining set, the coffee table, the washer and dryer, all bought with stolen money. Mr. Callahan had explained it already. Anything purchased with the fraudulent funds would either be seized or counted toward restitution, which meant technically this furniture was mine. But it didn't feel like mine. It felt like leftovers from someone else's feast. We left before dark. As we pulled out of the gravel driveway, I looked back one last time at the porch swing swaying gently in the breeze. It looked peaceful, but I wasn't fooled. Peace had to be earned, and I was still working on it. Sad. The following Monday, the district attorney's office called, a woman named Lydia with a kind but no-nonsense tone. "Mrs. Bennett," she said, "we're finalizing the case presentation for the judge. It would help if we had a statement from you. Something personal." I hesitated. "You mean, like a victim impact statement?" "Yes, ma'am. From your perspective, what this has cost you, emotionally, financially, whatever you feel the court should hear." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to write something scathing, to let the judge know just how thoroughly Elena had devastated my life. Another part wanted to stay silent, let the facts speak for themselves. But I knew better. Numbers tell part of the story. Stories tell the rest. Sud. That night, I sat down with a legal pad and a pen. I started writing. Slowly at first, one sentence, then another, then they poured out like water from a cracked jug. For 2 years, I worked double shifts as a janitor, while Elena Harrison collected money meant to keep me afloat. She wore designer clothes, traveled abroad, and lived in the lake house my son bought for me, while I rationed my medication and wore the same winter coat 3 seasons in a row. It wasn't poetic, it wasn't polished, but it was true. And it was mine. The next weekend, Ryan stopped by again, this time with takeout and a new manila envelope. "This came from Mr. Callahan," he said, setting it on the table next to the lo mein. "Preliminary estimate from the Financial Review. Want to hear it?" I nodded, chewing slowly. A noodle hung from my lip like a question mark. He pulled out a sheet and read aloud, "Initial payments from Ryan Harrison, $43,000. Fraudulent tax refunds filed under Claire Bennett, $11,400. Forged account gains, $9,300. Additional unauthorized purchases, $14,200. I blinked. That's... He did the math. $77,900, give or take. It didn't feel real. I couldn't even imagine what $77,900 looked like. Not in cash, not in numbers, not in time lost. I just knew it could have bought me peace. That Sunday, I returned to my regular church for the first time in months. It was hard, walking through those doors. Not because I didn't feel welcome, but because I knew people would ask questions. Small-town kindness often comes bundled with curiosity. Mrs. Langston caught me in the vestibule. "Claire, honey, I saw what happened in the paper. I'm so sorry." I nodded. "Thank you. If you ever want to talk about it, or need anything, meals, rides, prayers, you just say the word." I forced a smile. "I might take you up on that." She gave my hand a squeeze. "You're not alone." And for the first time in a long time, I almost believed it. So, later that night, Ryan called me from his apartment. I could hear traffic in the background. "Elena's bail hearing is tomorrow," he said. "And?" "She's not contesting the charges. Mr. Callahan says she's going to plead guilty." I closed my eyes. That's probably smart. "Yeah," Ryan said quietly, "but it doesn't feel like enough." "It's not," I replied, "but it's a start." Said. Tonight's porch-side wisdom: sometimes justice doesn't look like victory. It looks like paperwork and silence. But it's still worth chasing. Quirky truth of the night. The majority of identity theft cases are committed by people the victim knows. Most folks think it's hackers in basements. Usually, it's someone at the dinner table. And the debate for today. Does intention matter if the outcome is the same? Elena said she didn't mean to cause harm, but I still lived it. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not temperature-wise, though the air conditioning was working overtime for a spring day. No, it was the kind of cold that seeps into you from the walls, the weight of 1,000 arguments and regrets that had settled into the wood and tile. I sat on one of the long benches in the hallway outside courtroom 3B, my hands folded neatly in my lap, the victim's statement in my purse beside me. Ryan sat next to me, both elbows on his knees, fingers laced together like he was bracing for something physical. "She's already in there," he said, glancing at the closed doors. "Callahan said they brought her in through the side entrance to avoid the press." "The press?" I blinked. "There's press." He shrugged. "Small-town reporter? Probably. Stuff like this doesn't happen every day in Somersville." I exhaled slowly, watching a speck of dust drift in the light. It shouldn't have happened at all. When the bailiff finally opened the door, everything felt like it moved in half speed. We walked in behind Mr. Callahan, who gave us each a nod. He looked sharp, calm. I, on the other hand, felt like I'd swallowed a clock, every tick resounding in my chest. And then I saw her. Elena sat at the defense table, hands folded in front of her like a schoolgirl about to recite the pledge. Her hair was pulled back tightly, no makeup, no jewelry. She wore a simple gray cardigan that made her look smaller than I remembered. But when she turned and her eyes met mine, there was no trace of shame, just tiredness, a dull, almost distant sadness that didn't ask for forgiveness, but didn't reject it either. The judge entered. The clerk read the charges: wire fraud, forgery, identity theft, tax fraud. Each count was read clearly, the words bouncing off the high ceiling like church bells. And then came the question, how do you plead? Elena stood slowly, cleared her throat, and said, guilty. Just like that. No drama, no theatrics, just one word that rippled through me like cold water. I expected relief, but what I felt was more like grief. Quiet, shapeless grief for the woman she could have been, for the trust we'd all lost, for the version of me that believed her. So, the judge nodded and moved on. He asked if I was present and willing to deliver my statement. I stood up on legs that weren't sure they'd cooperate and approached the little podium. The courtroom was still. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to hum more softly. I unfolded my paper and began. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I said. I had 3 pages written, typed and edited and rewritten, but it all boils down to this. I looked at Elena. Her eyes met mine. For once, she didn't look away. For 2 years, I lived as if I was invisible. I said, not because I wanted to, but because someone I trusted decided I didn't matter enough to protect. I worked through illness. I skipped meals. I rationed medication. All the while, Elena was living in the house meant for me, using money meant to help me, spending time by the lake while I scrubbed floors and hoped my electricity wouldn't get shut off. The judge listened quietly. Ryan sat unmoving. She didn't just steal money. She stole security. She stole peace. She stole 2 years of dignity from a woman who had already lost her husband and was just trying to get by. I swallowed hard. But I'm still standing, and I still have my name. She tried to take that too, but it's mine, always has been, and now I want it back in every sense. The judge thanked me. I returned to my seat, my knees suddenly weak. After the hearing, we stood outside in the spring sun. I leaned against the brick wall, trying to warm up from the chill that had settled inside me. She'll serve time, Mr. Callahan said. The DA is recommending 18 months. She'll be eligible for release after 12 if she behaves. That's it, Ryan said, voice sharp, all that damage, and she's out in a year. That's how the system works, Callahan replied. Restitution will continue for years. She'll be on probation. Her record is permanent. That follows her forever. I nodded. It's not justice, but it's accountability. That's enough for now. Huh. We went to the lake house later that afternoon. It felt different already. Elena's family had returned the keys early. All the furniture was left behind, and the place had a hush to it, like it had exhaled after holding its breath for too long. Ryan walked room to room like he was checking in on old friends. Want to start fresh, he asked. We can donate everything here. Redecorate. Make it yours. I looked at the living room, comfortable, tasteful, a life borrowed. No, I said, I want to live in it first, just as it is. Really? Yeah, I nodded. I need to live in what I missed. I need to sit in the places where she sat and remember that I survived it. Then, when I'm ready, I'll change everything. Huh? I spent my first night in the house that was supposed to be mine all along. I didn't sleep much, but I sat on the back porch swing, wrapped in an old quilt, listening to the soft hush of the lake under the stars. The wind carried scents I didn't recognize: lavender from the flower beds, pine from the woods, something herbal from the kitchen garden. Elena's mother must have planted thyme. I took deep breaths and let the air fill spaces that had been clenched shut inside me. This was mine now. The house, the quiet, the future. Old wisdom of the night. It's hard to reclaim something when it's been handled by someone else, but you can, with patience. Strange fact, lavender, when planted outside a home, used to symbolize protection in ancient folk traditions. I like that. Feels poetic. Debatable line closure is a myth. I used to think that too. But maybe closure isn't a door slamming shut. Maybe it's just learning to sleep in your own bed again finally, peacefully. The lake was quiet that morning. No wind, no birds, not even the sound of boats in the distance. Just still water and the occasional creak of the dock wood as it adjusted to the rising sun. I sat with a mug of tea, wrapped in a flannel robe I dug out of an old moving box, and tried to remember how it felt to start a day without tension in my chest. The lake house wasn't quite home yet, but it didn't feel like a stranger anymore, either. More like a place learning to recognize me as its new inhabitant. Inside, the walls still echoed with someone else's choices. The furniture carried the imprint of bodies that weren't mine. But outside, the water didn't care who lived here. The breeze didn't change direction depending on the name on the mailbox. Out here, I could just be Claire. No victim, no survivor, just a woman trying to learn how to live again. The first few weeks in the house were odd. Not bad, just strange in the way that moving into someone else's dream can be. I opened drawers and found neatly folded tea towels, some still with price tags. There was a bottle of balsamic vinegar in the pantry that probably cost more than my entire spice rack back home. A guest bedroom filled with matching pillows and throws in shades of beige and cream. Everything was curated, designed, but none of it had soul. So I started adding my own. A framed photo of Ryan and me on his college graduation day, a ceramic rooster I'd had since the 80s, a quilt my mother made that was more patch than pattern. Little by little, I pushed their life out of this space and replaced it with mine. Ryan came by every other day at first, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to check in. "I brought those blueberry scones you like," he said one morning, setting a brown paper bag on the counter. "The bakery lady says hi." "She's still wearing those loud scarves?" I asked with a smirk. "Every color of the rainbow." She said the brighter the scarf, the better the mood. "Maybe I should get you one." I raised an eyebrow. "Ryan Harrison, if you buy me a hot pink scarf with sequins, I'm sending you straight back to the city." He laughed, for real this time, not the tired, polite laugh he'd been faking lately. It felt good to see that, like the edges of our relationship were finally softening after everything had gone hard for so long. He made coffee while I set out plates. The kitchen already felt different, lived in, mugs with character, a fruit bowl with apples starting to wrinkle, and a calendar stuck to the fridge with handwritten notes. "What's this?" he asked, pointing to a scribble on next Wednesday. "Therapist appointment." He turned, surprised. "You're seeing someone." "I thought it might help," I said, a little self-conscious, just to untangle it all. "That's great. Mom, I'm proud of you." I poured coffee and tried not to let his words sting. Proud of me. For surviving a fraud. For not falling apart entirely. But I nodded anyway, because I was proud of me too, even if I didn't feel it all the time. Later that week, I walked into town for the first time since moving. It's funny how a change of address can change how people look at you. Mrs. Knox at the grocery store greeted me with a warm smile and a head tilt like she was trying to peek into my soul. "Heard about what happened," she whispered while weighing my onions. "Glad you're okay." I forced a smile. Getting there? People didn't ask too many questions. Maybe they were afraid of what they might hear. Maybe they were trying to be polite, but I could feel the curiosity behind every hello. They all knew. My story had become a cautionary tale before I'd even had the chance to tell it myself. 2 weeks later, Mr. Callahan called with news. Elena's sentencing hearing is next Friday, he said. The judge has reviewed your statement. The prosecution is recommending 18 months. There's a chance it could be reduced with parole. I was quiet for a moment. And the money? Restitution plan is approved. They've already frozen the fraudulent accounts. Once the IRS clears your name, you'll receive full control of the seized funds. He paused, voice softer now. Claire, you'll come out of this with roughly $95,000. My breath caught. That's including the house, he added, valued at $210,000, plus the funds recovered and compensation for identity theft. I set the phone down on the counter and just stared at it. $95,000. I'd never seen more than $3,000 in my account at once. This money that should have always been mine was finally coming home. Thank you, I whispered. You earned it, he said. No, I thought I survived it. There's a difference. That night, I sat on the back porch again, this time with a notebook in my lap. I started writing down everything I wanted to do with that money. Not just bills or groceries, but real dreams. New glasses. A reliable car. A community college art class. Maybe even a small garden shed out back with room for tools and a chair and some quiet music. I'd spent so long surviving, I forgot what it felt like to imagine things. To plan. Ryan called around 9 p.m. Hey, I wanted to check on you, he said. Jennifer says hi. Tell her I said thank you for the flowers. You got them. They're lovely. I put them in Elena's old vase. He paused. Does that feel weird? A little, I admitted, but oddly satisfying. He laughed, and this time I joined him. You're doing okay. Mom, he said softly, I hope you know that. I didn't say anything, because in that moment, I finally did. Dad. Tonight's little wisdom healing doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It sneaks in through small moments: an empty drawer, a full fridge, a porch swing at sunset. Strange truth of the day. The average person in America has $96,000 in debt. For once, I'm on the other side of that number and it still feels unreal. And the thought to sleep on is something truly yours. If it was stolen and returned, I say yes, because what matters isn't how you got it back, but that you never stopped believing you deserved it in the first place. I never thought I'd have to decide what kind of fence I wanted. But there I was, standing in the backyard of the lake house with a landscaping contractor, flipping through laminated sample boards like I was on some HGTV show I hadn't auditioned for. We could go with the classic white vinyl, he offered, low maintenance, good durability, or cedar has a nice, natural feel, smells great too. I smiled politely and nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. You see, just a few months ago, the only fence I'd ever thought about was the invisible one that separated me from stability. The one I couldn't climb because I was too tired, too broke, and too convinced it wasn't meant for people like me. Now I was choosing between cedar and vinyl, a luxury, a small decision in a life that finally had room for options. I chose cedar, not because it was practical, but because it smelled like something warm, something old and honest. Like starting over with dignity. Ryan helped me plant herbs later that day. Basil, rosemary, thyme, the real kind, not the dried-out jars I used to ration for spaghetti night. He knelt beside me in his khakis and button-down shirt, totally unbothered by the dirt. I glanced over at him as he gently patted soil around a baby lavender plant. You're good at this, I said. He shrugged. It's calming. It's also ironic, I added with a half-smile. You spend all day analyzing tech systems, and here you are babying cilantro. I guess I needed a new system to trust. We both laughed. It was the kind of afternoon that felt ordinary in the best way. No looming dread, no phone calls about forged accounts or hearings. Just sunshine, dirt under my nails, and the sweet smell of something that might actually grow. The sentencing hearing arrived quietly. No buildup. Just another date circled on the calendar, squeezed between refill prescription and replace porch bulb. But when the day came, I felt it in my chest like a balloon swelling behind my ribs. Ryan drove us to the courthouse. Same old building, same icy fluorescent lights, same faint scent of floor wax and stale coffee. But this time, Elena wasn't polished. She was in a beige prison-issued jumpsuit, no mascara, no smug smile, just a woman whose world had finally caught up with her. When the judge read the sentence, 18 months in prison, followed by 3 years probation, she didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just nodded, like she'd already served part of the sentence in her mind. I watched her leave in handcuffs. No drama, no last words. And when the door swung closed behind her, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry. I felt nothing. And nothing, as it turns out, is a kind of freedom. Afterward, Ryan and I went for lunch at a new diner on the edge of town. A bright place with retro booths and those little tabletop jukeboxes that haven't worked in 20 years. I ordered a grilled cheese and tomato soup, my comfort combo since middle school. I feel weird, I said, stirring my soup. Ryan looked up. Weird how? Like I should feel more. Relief, closure, satisfaction. I shrugged. But I just feel ready to move on. That sounds like closure to me, he said. I nodded slowly. Maybe. Or maybe it's just exhaustion wearing clean clothes. Say. The IRS sent a letter the next week. My name had officially been cleared. The false tax filings were voided. No criminal record. No further investigations. I opened the envelope at the kitchen table and laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt like the last piece of some cruel puzzle finally clicked into place. Ryan had brought over pastries again, blueberry danishes this time. Good news, he asked, eyeing the letter. I handed it to him. I'm not a tax criminal anymore. He grinned and clinked his coffee mug against mine like we were toasting champagne. You're a free woman, he said. I'm a woman who needs new drapes, I replied, pointing at the dusty beige curtains still hanging in the living room. He laughed. We can start redecorating anytime you want. I smiled. I already did. The next project was mine alone. I spent the better part of a weekend transforming the guest bedroom into a reading nook. I donated the old furniture, painted the walls a soft sage green, and brought in the bookshelf from my old house, the one I'd had since I was first married. It creaked now when I put books on it. Some of the wood was chipped, but it felt like me. That room became my sanctuary. A soft chair, a cozy lamp, and a stack of novels I'd been saving for someday. Well, someday had finally shown up wearing muddy boots and a lavender-scented candle. Sane. In town, people still asked questions, but they'd shifted, less curious, more admiring. Is it true she forged everything, Mrs.? Langston asked, as we both reached for a jar of peanut butter at the store. It's true, I said. You're brave, she said. I shrugged. I'm just stubborn. Well, Summersville's rooting for you. That was new. I wasn't invisible anymore. One afternoon, I stood by the lake with a cup of tea and thought about all the things Elena had taken from me. Then I listed all the things she hadn't. She hadn't taken my name, my kindness, my relationship with Ryan, my ability to start again. She hadn't taken my laugh, my hands, my memories of the man I loved, who'd promised to take care of me when he was gone and who did, in his own way, through the son we raised together. And she sure as hell hadn't taken my future. So, old woman truth for tonight. You can survive betrayal, but rebuilding trust, especially in yourself, is the real challenge, and the real reward. Fun fact, basil is believed by some cultures to ward off evil spirits. Mine's growing wild in the backyard. I figure I need all the help I can get. And your late-night musing justice is the beginning of healing, not the end of it. You might get back what was taken, but it takes time to feel whole again. The hardest part of healing wasn't forgiving Elena. It was forgiving myself. For not seeing the signs, for not asking harder questions, for believing the holiday candles and gift baskets meant she cared. I kept thinking, if I had just checked one more time, if I had just asked Ryan earlier, if I hadn't been so afraid to seem ungrateful. But regret, as I've come to learn, is just grief with extra luggage. And at some point, you have to stop unpacking it. The restitution money began trickling in that month. A frozen account released, a check from the IRS reprocessed, funds from credit card reversals officially redirected to me. The first time I saw my bank balance with a 5-figure number in front of it, I sat down on the floor in my bathrobe and cried. Big, quiet tears, not just because of what I now had, but because of how close I came to never having it. That money was never about luxury. It was about exhaling. Finally. It was knowing that if the washing machine broke, I could fix it. If the power bill ran high, I wouldn't have to choose between it and groceries. It was waking up without panic knocking on the back of my eyes. It was freedom, in the most boring and beautiful sense of the word. Said. A few days later, I called my old supervisor, Mrs. Henderson. Claire Bennett. We've been wondering if we'd see you again. You coming back? I smiled into the phone. Actually, no. A pause. You okay? Claire. I'm better than I've been in years, I said. I'm retiring. I could hear the surprise in her breath. Well, you deserve that. Thank you. I think I finally believe that. We chatted a few minutes longer. She told me I'd always have a place there if I needed it. I thanked her, and we said goodbye. I sat in my quiet kitchen and let that decision wash over me. No more scrubbing office toilets at midnight. No more hauling trash bags bigger than me. No more pretending I was fine when my knees begged me to quit. I was done. With Ryan's help, I met with a financial advisor, Jennifer's friend. Actually, a young woman named Valerie with cropped hair and a calm, practical voice. You've got enough to live comfortably, she said. Not extravagantly, but well, especially with the house fully paid off. I nodded. That's all I want. Comfort and choices. She smiled. That's exactly what a good retirement should be. She helped me set up a savings plan, a small donation fund, and even a modest travel account. The idea of travel felt surreal, like planning a trip to the moon, but I liked knowing it was there, even if I never used it. Spring bloomed around the lake house with a quiet elegance. The herbs in the backyard were thriving. I added marigolds to the front porch, planted tomatoes in raised beds Ryan helped me build, and spent long mornings watching the sunlight ripple across the water. One day, as I trimmed lavender and listened to the soft click of my garden shears, I realized I hadn't thought about Elena in nearly a week. Not once. That silence inside me, that absence of pain and resentment, was the closest I'd come to peace in years. Jennifer came by for dinner the following Sunday. It was the first time we'd really talked, just the two of us. Ryan was in the kitchen chopping onions and pretending not to listen. I brought a pie, she said, holding out a foil-wrapped tin. Homemade. Store-bought is fine too, I said with a smile, taking it, but homemade earns extra points. She grinned. It's blackberry, my mom's recipe. We sat on the porch swing while Ryan cooked. She asked about the garden, the court case, my plans. I think I'm going to take a class, I told her. Art or writing, maybe both. Good, she said. I think you have a story or two in you. I looked out at the lake. Yeah, I suppose I do. Later, after dinner, Ryan stayed behind to do dishes. Jennifer and I sipped tea under the fading light. Thank you, I said suddenly. She looked over. For what? For making my son smile again. She blushed. He's worth smiling at. I laughed softly. He is... The next morning, I wrote a letter to Elena's parents. It wasn't long, just a few honest sentences. I know you didn't plan this. I know you believed what your daughter told you. I'm not writing for forgiveness or explanation. Just to say I don't blame you. I hope you're okay. I hope you find peace. I didn't send it yet. Maybe I never would. But writing it down felt like letting go of a rock I'd been carrying in my chest. 1 year after that terrible Thanksgiving, the lake house was fully mine in every way. Not just legally, emotionally. The curtains were mine now. The pictures on the wall were mine. The garden out back had my name written in every row of basil and thyme. The guest room had become a craft space, with a second-hand sewing machine and a mood board for dreams I hadn't dared name before. And my phone no longer buzzed with tension. It rang with invitations, with laughter, with, "Mom, guess what?" I liked that sound. I liked who I was becoming in this house that was once stolen, then reclaimed. Wisdom for tonight. Sometimes, the life you were meant to live is waiting just on the other side of someone else's deception. You just have to outlast the storm. Quirky tidbit. Lavender isn't just calming, it also repels moths. So if you're ever fighting anxiety and closet pests, it's a 2-for-1 deal. And a thought to ponder. Is it healing if the wound still aches? Sometimes I say yes. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about growing stronger around the scar. It was raining the day I finally hung the new wind chimes. Not a hard rain, just the kind that tapped gently on the roof and blurred the edges of everything outside. Misty and soft. The kind of weather that makes you want soup and a sweater and maybe a book you've read 10 times before. I stood out on the porch in a raincoat, wind chimes in hand, and listened to the lake hum beneath the clouds. It felt like a good day to mark something, a line between what had been and what was now. The old chimes Elena's were long gone. I'd taken them down months ago. They sounded hollow and sharp, like teeth. These new ones were deeper, warmer, made of reclaimed copper and oak. I bought them from a local artisan who'd etched tiny wildflowers into the wood. When I hung them from the corner of the porch, they gave off a single, low note as the wind moved through. It sounded like peace. Sigh. Later, I sat in my reading nook with a cup of cinnamon tea and a stack of letters. Not from friends, but from myself. A few months ago, my therapist Grace had asked me to write grief letters, one for every part of my life that had shifted because of what happened. She called it naming the losses. Some were simple. To my sense of safety, I'm sorry I let you go so quietly. Others were raw. To my pride, you didn't deserve to be dismantled by kindness misplaced. The one that hit the hardest. To my time, I'm sorry I didn't protect you better. I see now how valuable you are. I read each one again. This time, I didn't cry. I just nodded. Like I was finally seeing all those moments not as failures, but as things that deserve to be witnessed and released. Then I burned them each letter, one by one in the little stone fire pit Ryan and I had built out back. The flames flickered, danced, and carried those words away in curls of gray smoke. Sigh. A week later, I got a call from my friend Janice. "You're not going to believe this," she said. "The community center is offering a memoir workshop. 6 weeks, free, starts Thursday." I paused. Memoir. "Yes, memoir," she said with her usual no-nonsense tone. "You know, those things old women write when they've lived through hell and come out the other side with stories and sass." I laughed. "You calling me old or sassy?" "Both," she said without missing a beat, "but mostly brave." I signed up that afternoon. The workshop turned out to be in a sunny room filled with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh coffee. There were only 6 of us, 2 retired teachers, a quiet man with a long white beard, a widowed pastor's wife, and a young woman who was writing about her mother's disappearance. When it was my turn to share why I came, I took a deep breath and said, "Because for a long time, someone else was telling my story, and I'm ready to take it back." The room went still. Then heads nodded. They understood.
Sad.
As spring turned to early summer, the lake house began to feel like it was breathing with me. I hosted a book club on the porch. We drank lemonade and gossiped about fictional characters like they lived down the road. I took afternoon walks through the woods behind the property, sometimes just to hear the wind in the trees. I painted one of the guest rooms sunshine yellow and called it my daydream space. It held a rocking chair, a plant I named Lillian, and a notebook where I jotted down thoughts like, I'm allowed to want more and forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom with scars. Ryan and Jennifer visited often. One Saturday, they brought a picnic, and we sat by the water while ducks squabbled over breadcrumbs. Jennifer leaned over at one point and said, "He's different, since everything happened." "Better?" I asked. She nodded, calmer, more aware. He pays attention in a way I don't think he did before. I looked over at my son, barefoot on the dock, skipping stones like he was 10 again. Sometimes, I said, the best version of someone only shows up after a storm.
Odd.
Elena hadn't written. I didn't expect her to. I saw her name on the restitution updates, the monthly ledger that showed how much had been recovered and how much was still owed, a legal paper trail that now stood in for apology. She was a shadow now, a consequence, not a person I needed anything from. It took me a while to stop checking my phone for a message that would never come. Now I didn't even notice it hadn't arrived. One evening, as the sky turned lilac over the lake, I sat with a pen and wrote the first real sentence of my memoir. This story isn't about a woman who was robbed, it's about a woman who remembered her worth. It felt true, and it felt like a beginning. Tonight's quiet wisdom. You don't need permission to reclaim your own story. Take it, hold it close, rewrite it if you have to. Little known fact. Copper wind chimes aren't just pretty, they're said to protect homes from negative energy. Maybe that's just folklore, but sometimes, folklore feels like the truth we forgot we needed. And one final thought. Some people leave you with emptiness. Others remind you that you were whole all along. I hope you know which one you are. The first time I danced in the living room, I was alone. No music, no one watching, just me. A patch of sunlight through the window, and the sudden urge to move like I used to when I was young and nobody expected me to be serious all the time. It wasn't graceful. My hips creaked, my knees protested, and I laughed out loud when I bumped into the side table. But for the first time in ages, my body wasn't just surviving, it was celebrating. There's something sacred about moving in a space that once held silence and shame. The same floor where I once opened letters from the court was now the floor I slid across in fuzzy socks with my arms wide open. It was freedom. Silly, unexpected, full-hearted freedom. That afternoon, I finally cleaned out the last of the locked filing boxes from my old place. Boxes I hadn't dared open when I first moved to the lake house. They were full of saved receipts, unpaid bills, old calendars from years when I juggled shifts like a circus act. One page was marked with red ink rent, or meds not both. I ran my fingers over that note like it was someone else's handwriting. It both was and wasn't. I wasn't that woman anymore, but she was still part of me. Still the one who scraped her way through every cold morning and sleepless night, the one who got me here. So instead of tossing the page, I framed it. I hung it in the laundry room beside a photo of the house on the day I moved in. A reminder we survive so we can thrive. Ryan called later that evening. "Hey, Mom, how do you feel about a weekend getaway?" I blinked. "A what?" He laughed. "Jennifer and I are planning a little trip. Nothing crazy, just the coast, a cottage, some seafood, maybe a boat ride. I haven't packed a suitcase in 10 years. Ryan." "Then it's about time," he said. I hesitated, but then I thought of the little savings envelope labeled just because. I'd never touched it. Not once. Not even for new shoes. Okay, I said. Let's go.
Say.
The trip was like breathing salt air for the first time. We stayed in a small cedar-shingled cottage with blue shutters and a back deck that faced the Atlantic. The wind carried the smell of ocean and rosemary. I sat on a wicker chair with a paperback novel and a glass of sweet iced tea, while Jennifer made crab cakes and Ryan flipped through a travel guide like it was a treasure map. One evening, we walked along the beach, our footprints trailing behind us in the wet sand. Ryan picked up a shell and handed it to me. "Here," he said, "for your collection." "I don't have a shell collection."
Well, he said with a grin, start one.
I still have that shell. It sits on my nightstand like a quiet reminder that life keeps offering beauty even after everything.
Side.
Back home, the garden had exploded in our absence. Tomatoes hung heavy on their vines. The basil had taken over half the bed, and the marigolds looked like tiny suns lining the porch. I spent the next morning clipping herbs and filling a basket with things I'd grown, things that were mine. The phone rang around noon. It was Grace, my therapist. "How's the writing coming?" she asked. I looked down at the open journal on the kitchen table. "I think I'm almost done," I said. She smiled through the line. "Then maybe it's time to ask yourself what's next."
Said.
What was next? That question sat with me all week. For so long, my days had been about repair, about survival, about clawing my way back to level ground. Now that I'd found it, now that I stood on it with steady feet, what was I supposed to build? One morning, I took a notepad and wrote 3 simple things. Volunteer at the Literacy Center. Host a dinner for the people who stood by me. Write my story for real this time. And beneath that, in smaller letters, make joy a habit, not a reward. The dinner happened on a warm Saturday evening. I grilled lemon chicken, roasted vegetables, baked a pie from scratch. Ryan and Jennifer brought sparkling cider and jokes. Janice arrived with her infamous deviled eggs. Even Valerie, my financial advisor, stopped by with her partner and a bottle of elderflower tonic. We sat outside on folding chairs and mismatched cushions, passing dishes and stories like old friends. At one point, someone asked, "Claire, what's the biggest thing you've learned from all this?" I paused, looked around at the faces in the glow of string lights. That I was never asking for too much, I said, just from the wrong people.
Sam.
That night, I sat on the dock long after the dishes were done and the last laugh had faded. The lake shimmered under the moon, quiet as always, but different now, familiar. A loon called in the distance, its cry stretching across the stillness like a lullaby for grown-ups. I curled my toes over the edge of the wood and whispered into the night. "I'm home." And I meant it. Tonight's slow breath wisdom, joy doesn't have to be loud. It can be a tomato ripening on the vine, a wind chime on a rainy day, a second chance written in quiet ink. Weird but true. The Atlantic coast of North Carolina is home to over 2,000 shipwrecks. They call it the graveyard of the Atlantic, and yet, people still sail those waters every day. That's hope. And a final note to hold close. You're allowed to be both broken and blooming. One doesn't cancel the other. I think that's where I live now, in the middle space where healing grows. The morning I started teaching at the Community Literacy Center, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. Not because I was nervous, though I was, but because I was trying to find the version of myself who belonged in front of a classroom again. Not as a student, not as a survivor, but as someone with something worth sharing. I chose my favorite soft green cardigan and simple earrings, comfortable, familiar, nothing flashy. When I arrived, the director, a woman named Teresa with smile lines as deep as her knowledge, welcomed me like an old friend. "Claire, we're so glad you're here." The classroom was small, with mismatched chairs, a chalkboard, and a table covered in pencils and lined paper. My students were mostly women in their 30s to 60s, with a few younger men who were learning to read later in life. One woman, Carla, had never written her own grocery list before. Another, Denise, used to memorize street signs by color because she couldn't sound out the names. And there I was, teaching them to own their voices, their names, their power. It was humbling, and it was healing. That afternoon, I walked back to the lake house with a full heart and a buzzing mind. I passed the garden, now alive with bees and fluttering leaves, and paused to check the lavender, still fragrant, still thriving. Funny how the things I once bought for decoration had become anchors. Little reminders that even in stillness, something could grow. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh herbs. My home, my space, mine. And yet, there was still room always for new chapters. Ryan called that night with big news. "We're getting married," he said, his voice breaking into a grin I could hear. "Oh, honey," I gasped. She said yes. She asked me. He laughed. Jennifer planned the whole thing, took me on a hike and popped the question with a little handmade ring she braided out of grass. She always did have style. "We want you to be part of it all," he added, "from the guest list to the centerpieces." I pressed a hand to my heart. "You're sure?" "Mom, you're the reason I'm the man she wants to marry. Of course we're sure." That night, I opened a new notebook and wrote at the top of the page, "Wedding plans." Not mine, but something just as special. Over the next few weeks, life unfolded with a quiet rhythm. I taught 2 days a week, gardened when the sun allowed, and wrote in the mornings with a steaming cup of tea by my side. My memoir had grown into 5 chapters and a working title, "The House That Was Meant for Me." People started reaching out small messages from others in town. "Your story gave me the courage to file my divorce papers. My sister went through something similar. Thank you for being public with it. Would you ever come speak at our women's group?" It was never about attention. It was about letting others know they weren't alone in the dark. The same way I once needed someone to do for me. Elena's name stopped showing up in my mail. Restitution payments had shifted to automatic deposit. Her case had closed. Her parole status no longer needing updates. She was out of prison, I assumed, somewhere, rebuilding her own story. I didn't think about her often, but when I did, it wasn't with anger. It was with a sort of distant acceptance, like remembering a storm that passed through, took the roof off your house, but somehow left your favorite chair untouched. She had taken pieces of my life, but she hadn't destroyed it. If anything, she forced me to rebuild it stronger. Jennifer stopped by one Sunday to plan wedding things. She brought color swatches, invitation samples, and a giant binder with tabs like florals, desserts, and rain plan. We sat on the porch surrounded by papers and iced tea. "You ever think about getting married again?" she asked gently, not prying, just wondering. I smiled, gazing out at the lake. "No, I've already had one great love. That's enough." She nodded. "I think that's beautiful." "I think this is beautiful," I said, waving toward the garden, the water, the home around us. Not many people get to live a second life while they're still in the first one. She took my hand. "Thank you for letting me in." I squeezed hers back. "Thank you for making my son whole again." That night, as the stars settled into place over the lake, I pulled out the last journal I hadn't dared open until now. It held notes from the darkest months, scribbles about unpaid bills, who I could ask for help, moments I'd considered giving up. I read each one slowly, not to dwell, but to remember. Then I turned the page and wrote in pine-through ink. Today, I chose to stay, and that made all the difference. Tonight's breath of truth. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all, just a life so full, so real, so beautiful it renders the betrayal irrelevant. Curious fact of the night. The herb marigold, often planted beside vegetables, protects them from pests, bright, bold, and quietly protective like the women I now keep close. And the thought I'm holding close. Maybe the house was never the prize. Maybe it was the mirror, showing me who I really was, strong, soft, and finally, free. The day of the wedding arrived with the kind of golden morning you'd think only existed in stories. The air was crisp but soft, carrying the scent of dew, garden roses, and the faintest trace of cinnamon from the muffins I'd baked at dawn. The lake outside shimmered with calm ripples, as if even the water understood what a sacred day it was. Ryan and Jennifer were getting married under a wooden arch they built themselves, strung with wildflowers and strands of eucalyptus. Nothing fancy, just honest, handmade love, woven with care. And somehow, against all odds, I was there for it. Not on the edges, not as an afterthought, but right in the heart of it. I helped Jennifer into her dress in the back room of the chapel. She wore a soft, flowing gown that reminded me of the water itself, uncomplicated, graceful, and strong. She stood in front of the mirror, smoothing the fabric nervously. "You look beautiful," I whispered. She smiled, but her hands were trembling. "Do you think he's ready?" I tilted my head and chuckled. "Jennifer, that boy has been chasing good things his whole life. He finally caught one. Of course he's ready." She blinked back tears. "You really think so?" "I do, and I think you are too." She turned, hugged me gently, and whispered, "Thank you for raising a man who knows how to love." That nearly did me in. The ceremony was simple. No overdone vows, no string quartet, just a small circle of chairs by the lake, the sun on our shoulders, and love quiet and undeniable passing between two people like light through stained glass. I watched Ryan's face when Jennifer walked toward him. He didn't just smile, he softened. All the old hardness from the past few years, the guilt, the regret, the confusion, it all melted in that one moment. And I realized, right then, that we'd all made it out of something, not untouched, not unchanged, but whole. The reception was held on the lawn near the house. I had a little table set up with drinks, pie, and a photo board. Old memories of Ryan as a child, pictures of me and his father, and even a few shots of my new life, the garden, the reading nook, the wind chimes. A life reclaimed. People mingled, danced, and toasted. Jennifer's dad gave a speech that made everyone laugh. Ryan thanked me publicly, and I pretended I wasn't crying behind my sunglasses. Even Janice, in a floral dress and orthopedic sandals, pulled me onto the dance floor. "You did it," she said, twirling me gently. "No," I said, laughing. "We survived it." "Same thing, darling." As the sun dipped below the trees and fairy lights blinked on, I found myself standing alone at the edge of the lake. Not lonely. Just still. The reflection of the house shimmered in the water, warm, steady, alive. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was the setting of a new kind of story, one I'd written with every morning cup of tea, every planted basil seed, every hard truth spoken in therapy, and soft truth whispered into the dark. This house had once been stolen, then returned, then mine, and now. It was part of a legacy. A place where healing bloomed, where laughter found its way back, where my son built something beautiful on ground we thought was scorched, and where I became someone I hadn't been in years. Safe, seen, unafraid. Later, I sat on the porch swing with a slice of wedding cake on my lap and no one around. The night was cool. The wind chimes sang. And I finally let myself whisper the words I hadn't dared say out loud yet. "I'm proud of me," said. Final quiet truth. Some stories aren't meant to end with thunder. They settle like morning mist, soft, clear, and full of promise. Little-known sweetness wedding cake always tastes better under fairy lights and second chances. And the last thought I'll leave with you. You are not what was taken from you. You are what you chose to build in its place. Thank you for walking with me. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. Truly. It's not easy. Hearing about the messy parts, the broken trust, the loss, the grief that doesn't shout, but hums quietly under your skin until you almost forget what it felt like to live without it. But I hope what you also heard was hope. Because even when the ground gives out from under you, even when the people you trusted most are the ones who hurt you the deepest, there's still a way forward. It's not always big or brave or sudden. Sometimes, it's just one slow, tired step, one truthful conversation, one moment where you decide, I deserve better than this. I spent too long thinking I had to accept whatever scraps were handed to me, that because I was older or quieter, or not the loudest voice in the room, I had to shrink to fit the spaces I was given. But now I know I can take up space. I can plant roots. I can start again, even if I never meant to. There's power in reclaiming what was yours, not just the tangible things, money, homes, names, but the intangible ones too. Your voice, your confidence, your ability to laugh without fear of the next blow, and maybe most importantly, your future. So if you're listening to this, wrapped in your blanket, curled in the quiet of your own world, know that you are not too late, or too broken, or too forgotten to begin again. You are worthy of safety, softness, and joy. Just like I was, just like I am, and just like you. Thank you for listening to my story. Take a deep breath. Rest well. You made it.